PRX.
Friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for the podcast that never goes anywhere but is always going. It's time for the podcaster who really doesn't know what he's talking about, but eventually you'll say, in the best way possible. But if you're a new listener, that may not sound attractive. Does this sound attractive to you? A podcast you just barely need to listen to or don't need to listen to at all or could listen. A podcaster that'll be here to keep you company and take your mind off of stuff, but not really put you to sleep and not really, just barely entertain you, maybe put you to sleep. These are the things people love about this show, but it does take some getting used to. So if you're new, give it a few tries because you deserve a good night's sleep. Even if you never listen to this podcast again, check out sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. That's got other sleepy stuff on there. Because even if you don't like me or the show, you still deserve a good night's sleep. You still deserve a bedtime you could look forward to. We know how it feels, myself and a lot of the other people listening. While we might not have gone through whatever's keeping you awake, we can relate to some of the feelings in the deep, dark night. So what's going to happen is there's going to be support for the show. That's how we get to be free twice a week. Then there'll be a long, meandering intro. That's kind of a show within a show meant to ease you into bedtime. And then there'll be, other stuff coming up from there, bedtime story and stuff like that. All to keep you company while you fall asleep. I'm so glad you're here. Like I said, give it a few tries, see how it goes. I'm here to help and keep you company. And it's time for Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. And these sponsors are how we're able to do this for free twice a week. Hey, everybody, Scoots. And I don't know how you're listening to Sleep With Me right now, but don't you want to be listening to the show in the most comfortable way possible? How about with a little bit of a Sleep With Me swag on your forehead? So, and maybe anybody else, say, oh boy, sleeping with my boyfriend here. Well, the most comfortable way to listen to Sleep With Me is with sleep phones. And you could get Sleep With Me branded sleep phones at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones. It's amazing, comfortable way to listen to Sleep With Me. They have wireless sleep phones. They have corded sleep phones. They have wireless with wireless charging sleep phones. So you don't need your phone there. And you won't keep your partner awake or your pet awake. They're great for running. They cover your ears. Some people even pull them down over their eyes. And you could get those at sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones. Treat yourself in the new year, because I don't know which way you're listening to Sleep With Me now. Don't you want to listen the most comfortable way? That's sleepwithmepodcast.com/sleep phones and use Sleep With Me, one word, Sleep With Me at checkout for $5 off. Thanks, everybody. All right, everybody, it is time for the Sleepy Supporter Zone, the one part of the podcast I need you here. It's where I pop my peas, if you please. I thank the listeners who supported the sponsors, and that's how we come out free twice a week, is the listeners who take action. And you probably heard my messages. Hey, we got a few sponsors with great free trials. We've got a few sponsors right now with great free tools, Helix, Progressive, and ZocDoc. So please check those out. There's also another free way to help the show, which is just spreading the word, whether it's in person, on social media, or in a forum, that's more private or whatever. Let me know about it. Fill out the form at sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer and let me know, and I'll say thank you. I can send you a thank you video if you refer the show. And tag me on social media when you do it so I can say thanks as well. That's sleepwithmepodcast.com/refer. I really appreciate it. The show grows because of word of mouth from people like you. Let people know your honest experience. And I'll try to even thank you here on the Sleepy Supporter Zone. That's the first part of the Sleepy Supporter Zone. The second part is you getting the support you need right now. If you're in need of extra resources, there's links to resources, including international resources you can connect with right now. So please use those. It's also about being a part of community and positive change, not just saying Black Lives Matter, not just saying stop AAPI hate, not just saying support Ukraine. And of course, more and more, wherever you could take action to be a part of positive change. And there's resources for some places where you could start to learn more and take action in our show notes. But one of those is joining our community as we build hygiene kits for people experiencing homelessness. You could sign up for our newsletter. That's where everything happens at sleepwithmepodcast.com/midnight mission. And the links to everything are in our show notes as well in your podcast app. And what do you say Mystery Bard. A lot of people help out on this show. Who are they?
Posty poster son sounds like an earful. Wrote the theme song. Edits episodes. Carl W. the legend. Also edits episodes. Ashley Cameron. Kenny, Scotty, Jennifer. Eric and the team at Astound are on the website. I am the mystery bard. I do the lullabies, yeah. I do commissions at jonathanmann.net. I'll write a song for you. Any reason at all. You can tell me the story and I'll make it personal. You see the kindness shine straight on through when the listeners form their own Facebook group. Keith, Stacy, Sarah, Julie, and Jennifer. These are your narrators. Get support your scooter on Patreon. Buy the merch and support the sponsors. You can find anything you want at sleepwithmepodcast.com. And we're so proud that we could dance. Rusty Biscuit, Lois, Anna like banana. Leah does the transcripts.
Thanks, Mystery Bard. What do you say we slow it down and get on with the show? Hey, are you up all night tossing, turning, mind racing, trouble getting to sleep, trouble staying asleep? Well, welcome. This is Sleep With Me, the podcast that puts you to sleep. We do it with a bedtime story. All you need to do is get in bed, turn out the lights, and press play, and I'll do the rest. And what I'm going to attempt to do is create a safe place so that to take your mind off stuff to keep you company so that you could fall asleep. Like a safe place where you could set aside whatever's keeping you awake, whether that's thoughts, things on your mind about the past, the present, the future, thinking thoughts, feelings, anything you're feeling emotionally that's coming up for you, or physical sensations. Changes in time, temperature, routine. You might have something coming up. You might be traveling. You might have guests. You might be going through something specific. Or you might not know. A lot of times for me, it's baffling. But whatever it is that's keeping you awake, I'm here to try to help it because you deserve a good night's sleep. If I can say something and you don't hear anything else I say and you never listen to the show ever again, I hope you remember that one part. You deserve a good night's sleep. You deserve a bedtime you don't have to dread, that you could feel neutral about or look forward to. You really do. And, that's why I make this show. There's also, I have a website. If you already say, I don't think this is a show for me, sleepwithmepodcast.com/no thank you. Has other sleep podcasts and sleepy stuff out there. But you deserve a good night's sleep. Like, you deserve the rest you need so your life is more manageable and that you could build towards flourishing. Because if your life's better, the world we live in is a better place. But it's also important, and you deserve a good night's sleep, and it's important to me, and there's a lot of other people right now nodding their heads, regular listeners. Because not only do you deserve a good night's sleep, a lot of us that are nodding our heads right now, we know how it feels. We might not know exactly what you're going through, but a lot of us can relate to how it feels in the deep, dark night or before bed or 2 day, the start of the weekend, thinking about Sunday night or in the morning or in the middle of the, we know how it feels. We might not know exactly what you're going through, like I said, but we can relate. So give the show a few tries. It does take a couple episodes to get used to. That's what just hundreds and thousands, if not a million people have told me. It took 2 or 3 tries to get used to because the show is very different. And obviously, if you came and checked out this podcast, you're probably skeptical or doubtful. Maybe you've tried stuff year after year after year and you haven't found something that's worked consistently. Well, I hope this podcast can help you. I hope it can be something that helps. And what I'll do is I'll send my voice across the deep, dark night here. I'm going to use lulling, soothing, creaky, dulcet tones, pointless meanders, and superfluous tangents. So that means I'll go off topic, then I'll get mixed up. Then I'll say, wait a second, I forgot about this. And then I'll say, what was I talking about? And then I'll get mixed up again. I'm already mixed up about something, and I'm not even, don't even know what I'm mixed up about. Then I'll misspeak like that. But the whole idea is that the creaky dulcet tones is that my voice isn't traditionally soothing or traditionally soothing. Traditionally is a a non-traditional way of saying traditional in my head. But so it's not traditionally soothing because my voice is here to be distracting, to keep you company in the deep, dark night. Because this is a podcast you don't really listen to. You just kind of barely listen. But the weird thing is you can listen. There's a few percentage of people that are listening that can't sleep at all. And I'm here to keep them company. I'll be here to the very end if you can't sleep or if you need a break during the day. But I'm here to keep you company and take your mind off of stuff. But you can kind of just barely listen. Just like, I go through this every once in a while. There's this popular idea of active listening, and it is an important thing during the day, but it can feel like a bit of practice. Like, oh boy, I got to have my listening. Who would think you'd have to have a listening A game? I mean, I guess if they were teaching anything at school, it would probably be harder than teaching maths or arithmetic, teaching listening. And it would take a really special teacher. None of this is ironic. Like, I'm serious. But they should teach listening in school. I mean, they kind of try. They try to teach it, but they don't. They try to meta teach it or something. I don't know what I'm talking about now. I mean, it's a key part of learning. But if maybe, I mean, at least for me, I guess I can't speak for everybody else. I could use about 24 years of listening education in small bites, please. I mean, I heard they came out with like Duolingo math. How about Duolingo listening? Usually I shut that off because I can't listen right now anyway. So I can't even listen on Duolingo. I say I got to listen. I can't listen right now. Too distracted. Just keep it to the words, Duolingo. What was my point, though? Oh, you don't need to listen to me. No pressure to have that active listening. You could even pretend, but you don't even have to. You say, oh, yeah. Totally. Ooh, that sounds like what a day. Man. Yep. I hear you. I hear you. Oh, boy, do I. Oh, yeah. You could do all that. You could even practice new stuff. You say, okay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Scoots. Keep going. You could pretend you're taking, but that's probably a little bit too much work because you pretend you're taking some sort of imaginary shorthand. Okay. But I guess if you're taking shorthand, here's something that's never been portrayed in a movie that I know about or a show. But maybe this, like why did I say Lurlds? The world's loudest stenographer. The legend of the world's loudest stenographer. Maybe that'll be, is a stenographer and shorthand the same thing? I don't know. So I guess I know what this episode's going to be about. So that's nice. I mean, that sounds like a good, like, it doesn't sound sleepy, but don't worry. It won't be an actual, because normally it wouldn't take much to be the world's loudest stenographer. Maybe. I don't know. You see, you don't remember My Cousin Vinny 3, the stenographer in that movie? And I said, don't, but you could, I'm sure, there's great minds think alike. So, yeah. Was there a stenographer in that one? Probably there was. If it was anything like one, that was a film that may or may not have a stenographer in there. What about like you say? Well, no. I only take. I'm a character actor. I only play stenographers. Or I can stretch myself. I can be a courtroom. I can play a courtroom artist. Can't make any courtroom art. Oh boy, can I I can, oh boy, can I pretend I'm painting or drawing a person, making a speech or whatever. Holy moly. But I prefer stenographers, because I have different looks. Oh, this is a sleep podcast? Holy shorthand. I don't even know what that means, but I just wanted to say that phrases that have rarely been spoken. What if you had, there's even a punch, like if you had a Bible written in stenography or whatever, you'd say, holy shorthand. That's the closest thing to a joke I've ever come up with in this podcast. It's almost, that's like three-eighths of a joke there. You know, what did the receiver of that gift, when a stenographer wrote a Bible in shorthand, what did the person who received it say? But you couldn't use shorthand twice. Oh, you're here for a sleep podcast that you don't need to listen to. I think that's what I've been rambling about for about 8 minutes. So this is a podcast you don't really listen to. Doesn't put you to sleep either. I'm here to keep you company while you fall asleep. So I'll be here to keep you company and take your mind off of stuff. To be your bore friend, your bore bae, your bore sib, your bore bud, your bore bestie, your bore burr, your neighbor. I'm here to be your friend in the deep, dark night and keep you company so that you could fall asleep, to take your mind off of stuff that so you could drift off. So this is this first sleep podcast, but it doesn't put you to sleep. It just keeps you company. I'm a friend in the deep, dark night. So those are two things to know. Take some getting used to. I think I said that. A lot of people get to the show and they're like, what is this? It never is going anywhere. And I say, well, it's always never going anywhere. It's just like you'd say, the world's loudest stenographer, pretty quiet. You might say, makes sense. Or you might say, none of this makes any sense. And I'd say, well, you're in the right place. So those are a few things to know. Another thing that could throw people off is the structure of the show. And the structure is, it follows a very specific structure, but you can adjust it as you become a regular listener. So the show starts off with a greeting, friends beyond the binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So hopefully you feel seen and welcome. Then there's a greeting. Then there's support for the show. So it can come out for free twice a week, be optional to pay for it. And then there's an intro. Oh, then there's support for the show. So that's the support for the show. Then there's support for people that listen to the show, and support for communities around the show. Then there's an intro, which we're like about 10 minutes into. The intro can be anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes long. And sometimes people associate the intro and the sponsor support and the supporter zone and all that together. But the sponsor support's what keeps it coming out for free on the regular. The intro is supposed to introduce the podcast. But if you're a regular listener, it's meant to ease you into bedtime. Or if you're new, it could ease you into bedtime. But ideally, for a lot of listeners, the intro is part of their wind down routine. Whether you're getting ready for bed, you're doing another chill activity, or you're in bed getting comfortable. The intro is a slow wind down to give you some space between being awake and asleep. And that's just what's been shown to work. And actually what works for me is having a wind down routine. Like, so this podcast, it just can't put you to sleep right away. And I'm not sure, like for some people, they might find something that works for them regularly that does. But for this show, it's a companion. So it eases you into bedtime. And ideally just to stop listening to me and I keep going. Or some people set sleep timers. But you could kind of adjust how you listen as you become a regular listener, just to see how it goes. So that's the intro. Then there's support between the intro and the story, so the show can be free. And then there'll be a bedtime story. Apparently tonight will be about the world's loudest stenographer. But we'll probably change that title because you say, why would I listen to a sleep podcast about a loud stenographer? And I'd say, I don't know, because I just thought of it, just came up during the intro, and I said, well, that'll make an interesting story. So, but to me, what's interesting, you say, okay, yeah, that sounds like something I could just barely listen to. So, okay, so that's the story. Then the show ends with thank yous and good nights. And so that's the structure of the show. That's why I make the show. I'm really glad you're here. I really appreciate you coming by and checking the show out, and I really hope I can help you fall asleep. Thanks again for coming by, and here's a couple ways we're able to do it for you for free twice a week. Sleep With Me is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving, cleaning, and even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. All right, everybody. This is one of these famous tales that's never been told before. But I thought I should look up some facts just to, this is like this tale called the World's Loudest Stenographer. And I just wanted to look up, make sure I had some of my facts straight, even though I already know the story is like a stenographer. And, you know, just make sure that... You all knew that. So this is from, maybe I should just look it up on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia comes under stenotype, Stenotype. The stenotype, a steno machine or stenotype machine, shorthand machine, stenograph, or steno writer. It's a specialized corded keyboard or typewriter used by stenographers for shorthand use. In order to pass the U.S. registered professional reporter test, a trained person must write speeds of approximately 180, 200, and 225 words per minute at very high accuracy. Some stenographers can reach words of 300 per minute, and the website has an official record for American English at 375 words a minute. Now, just this is the keyboards, stenotype or stenotype. You say steno, I say stenopad. Stenopad. No, it's a stenopad. It has far fewer keys than a conventional alphanumeric keyboard. Multiple keys are pressed simultaneously, known as chording or stroking. This is stuff I didn't actually notice. Spell out whole syllables, words, and phrases with a single hand motion. And this makes real-time transcription practical. For certain situations, because the keyboard does not contain all the letters of the English alphabet. Letter combinations are substituted for the missing letters. And there are several schools of thought on how to record various sounds, such as Stened, Phoenix, and Magnum Steno theories. First shorthand machine, stenotype wasn't used for 80 years or more, was a punched paper strip built in 1830. The first machine was 1863, but actual use was 1880 in Italy. In the U.S., 1875, there was a patent filed, and then in 1879, the shorthand machine. And 1909 in France, and the most related to today's stenotype or stenotype was created by Wardstone, Ireland in 1913. And stenotype was applied to the machine, and modern hardware, there's modern keyboards that have more in common with computers than they do with typewriters or QWERTY computer keyboards. And most contain microprocessors that allow sensitivity adjustments. So this isn't so important because this is an older tale. There's many steno enthusiasts are making and selling keyboards designed for use with Plover, an open source steno software. And there's a few different ones like those. There's also maps of the keyboard layout and describing home position. Steno paper has become almost obsolete with the advancement in paperless stenotype machines. When it's used, though, steno paper comes out of a stenotype machine at the rate of 1 row per chord, with the pressed letters printed out in 22 columns corresponding to 22 keys. Don't know if I understand that. And there's even a chord chart for consonants and vowels, final consonants, punctuation. Let's see what else we have here. Cover a little bit of shorthand really quick. Shorthand is abbreviated symbolic writing method. That's what I always idea of a stenopad. When I would see them around my house, I don't know. I guess my dad maybe took notes in them sometimes. They were not written in shorthand though. It increases speed and brevity of writing compared to longhand. It's a more common method of writing a language. Longhand is? The process of writing shorthand is called stenography from the Greek stenos, narrow, and graphene, to write. Narrow writing, not shorthand. Give me a little narrow write, eh? It's also been called brachys, brachography and tachography from Greek, short or swift. So fast writing, that's what I do. Actually, I don't write fast. Even when I'm trying to, I don't. And there's a variety of 19th century systems. Many forms of shorthand exist according to Wikipedia. It provides symbols or abbreviations for words and common phrases, which can allow someone well trained in the system to write quickly as people speak. Abbreviation methods are alphabet based and use different. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misusing stenographer in this case. Of course, the world's loudest stenographer. And this was a famous case. It didn't, again, these are tales rarely told. And this was actually one of the times I actually helped. I don't want to brag because, this stuff, I'm not even supposed to make it public information. But there was, there's times, mostly it's involved the trick-or-treat season and Lady Witchbeard. But if you're new, I do have other jobs other than making a sleep podcast, though I'd call this a pastime at this point. And there's this one bed and breakfast. And I've pitched this actually to other hotels and other companies. But normally, I'm laughing, they undervalue things so greatly, which is weird because they pay for video production and video editing and stuff. But when you tell them, hey, this is what I would consider a reasonable compensation, they say, well, we were thinking you just get a free hotel room for one night. And they'd say, well, it takes me no thank you, maybe no thank you. Or they say, well, how about 2 nights, maybe 3? And I say, okay, thank you for your time. I say, appreciate it very much. But this is actually different because this is a bed and breakfast. Now, still in the history of the podcast, haven't had really very many bed and breakfast situations other than this one. Trying to think if I stayed at a bed and breakfast for a wedding or 2 weddings maybe. So, okay. But so there's a bed and breakfast, and it's run by a couple, and they used to hire me in the early days of the podcast because I was like, well, I was supporting the podcast with my, my day job and then this hobby, mostly my day job, and but this bed and breakfast, they said, hey, why don't you come out here? We have a very unique clientele. And normally it's different than a normal bed and breakfast that's usually couples. They said most of our clientele are individual beings. And they're actually coming for bed and breakfast, like a little R&R, usually multiple nights. And, our clients are confidential. Though I've I've gotten permission when I said, well, this person was famous, for the Monster Mash or whatever, for that song similar to like Lady Witchbeard for one. I mean, well, actually, her real name's Connie, a witch named Connie. That was the first episode Lady Witchbeard was in. Okay, but I'm way off track as usual. So where was that? Witchbeard, Lady Witchbeard. So, okay, so there's a bed and breakfast. That's where I was. And they would have me go tell bedtime stories in the vicinity of their clients that were having trouble sleeping. And it worked great. But I slowly found that I had a greater role there. And I would spend time with the clients just as a listener and willing to walk with them in an unofficial capacity as a helper, but not I don't know, I guess similar to a friend would help someone, not like giving them advice or anything, but walking with them and keeping them company. A lot of times they would go, because the other thing about this bed and breakfast, and where the clients did not drive there most of the time, behind this bed and breakfast, well, as usual with most of them, there's like a breakfast, outdoor breakfast area. And then there's some gardens. I'm not sure if you'd classify them as English or Scottish or French or I don't know. And then there's some more water-based gardens. Then there's a duck pond. And there's cottages back there, not on the duck pond, but, in between these different features that you may or may not find in a lot of archetypal bed and breakfast. Of course, yeah, oh boy, the listeners, I'd be remiss if I didn't say yes, there are plenty of doilies and French doors. I don't know what a leaded window is, but, glass doorknobs, that's another thing they have, and that's what I expect to find at a bed and breakfast, French doors at some point, not in my room, obviously, unless I had some sort of balcony situation. Glass doorknob, not necessarily, just to see a glass door, like an associated, guess that's not a requirement. French doors probably are, but I wouldn't even remember. I'd say, oh, were there French doors at that bed and breakfast or not? What was the other thing? And stuff in the back, gardens or something like that, breakfast in a bed. Oh, doilies. There's got to be doilies. Tea cozy, maybe. I don't necessarily have to have a poster bed or a canopy bed, but having one, I would say you at least have one on site, right? Like in one of the rooms, probably some bed with brass or iron. And, trying to think of other things. I mean, I could go, I know there's like a society of inns, because I've seen it and I've checked into places. I could do that. Like the Roy G. Biv Institute. Remember, that's another idea that's never gone anywhere, but I'd like it to, all my, one day, all holiday lights will be Roy G. Biv approved. And you see, does that mean they go in Roy G. Biv order? Not necessarily. It means you pay the fee to the Roy G. Biv Institute, and we approve your lights if we approve them. And the fee will help us have the funds to possibly approve your lights certified. Roy G. Biv Institute certified. Also have to pay off. Apparently, there's a Roy G. Biv estate. It was some kid and his family after they watched 3-2-1 Contact at some point. Typical. It was a kid's idea, at least, but now the kid's like, I don't even know, like older than me, but they said, could we patent or whatever, copyright Roy G. Biv? And I say, great. But at this point, we've lived long enough that there's probably a Roy G. Biv walking around somewhere. Wouldn't be a Roy because it would be, what about Biv G. Roy? Is there a Roy? Could that be in like season 5? It's me, Biv, Bev and Biv, the Roy twins. They could, I mean, they could just be cousins or something. I'm Bev and Biv, Biv and Bev, the Roy twins. Yeah, we're here to, maybe I could just invent them. Like, that could be like a new podcast. That's, the Roys are fictional? Oh, no. Okay. Oh, okay. So, the bed and breakfast. So behind the duck pond is also like a little nature walk. But if you go out on this nature walk, again, this is private property, so just don't show up there and try because you can't get there anyway. It's a very specific path. But this path connects to the transverse plane. And I've talked about this, but not in a while. Transverse plane, this was something that I discovered way back, 2013, 2014, before the glory days of multiverses. Before, that became one of the famous, before it really became glorified, the whole multiverse. And I mean, nowadays, everybody says, I think I have a general idea. Maybe I'll watch that graphic again to get a better grasp of multiverse, because I'm still not sure I understand it, but I pretend, everybody pretends they understand what a multiverse is. Transverse plane is two different things. The transverse is, I guess it's different than the it's where, the cross, it's a place where I guess multiverses intersect or cross over one another, or that it's easy, they're closely, if they're like some sort of, it's where it's easy to access. So that's the transverse, which I guess is the same as a multiverse. I think it's just an easier way to, like, multiverse means everything, like they're all over the place. But then when you start making them like, oh, there's little tubes, the transverse, you'd say, oh, okay. So I could see that there's they might not be overlapping, but they're within range of another. The transverse plane. So if you go out behind the thing, there's a transverse plane, which just basically means an area you're walking and you can access the transverse plane. Now, the difference between the transverse plane is that there's some other force at work, because it's not like, okay, I want to go to whatever PQV variant 44 and, take a look at the whatever, Beakverse or something like that. This one, it takes you where you need to go. So, and only if you're, as far as I know, I don't like to brag, but only if you're accompanied by me. So I would take the the guests to the hotel, and then I would go out for a walk with them, and we would discover via the transverse plane what we need to bring them on their journey. But I guess it wasn't independent of me, because the guests would also arrive from the transverse plane. And probably they'd be out, somebody would be like, well, there's probably somewhere else. I don't even know. Maybe it's just a country lane that they drive down, and then there's a parking area, and then they come in. But the only reason that's important is that, this was when I was this was not that long ago. I was working at the bed and breakfast. I said, I got to keep my in-person, one day people value, in-person bedtime stories, they realize, okay, you've been making 1,000 episodes. No wonder it costs, money. But so, to do it in person or at a hotel. But so I was like, I got to keep my game on, and it's different, it's not that different doing it in person. I just got to, maintain respectfulness. But these are non-human people normally. or what are we called? The mammals? Human, I forgot. I don't know what species we are. Humongous or something? A Homo sapiens. And so I was out there and they said, we got two guests, and they can't get along. They're about to go to some big presentation in the official capacity, and they're both really, neither one of them could sleep good. So we need you to help them fall asleep. And I can't talk about that because that's covered by my, understanding of but I can tell you all the other details about them, other than our professional part. And, also like the parts where I'm, trying to be sneakily heroic. And again, this is stuff we don't normally hear about except in myths, and it seems a little bit different. So hearing about it in modern day is probably going to be a bit confusing. But the two guests, one was what you would say is the keeper of the sun, and the other was the keeper of the moon, or the sun keeper and the moon keeper. But really, that's just a simple title, that one kind of keeps the spirit of the sun and the spirit of the moon. And they also represent the sun or the moon. And, they have different powers or whatever. But apparently, other than Pluto, most of the solar system is drama free. You don't have things saying, your planet, you're not none of the other planets have to deal with this, except for maybe Neptune or whoever's last, and Uranus being the butt of a bunch of jokes. There's not a lot going on, maybe songs, but that's cool. I'm Venus, I'm your fire. What's your desire? Or others, Saturn, Saturn's rings. Oh boy, are they great? Or, whatever songs, Jupiter. When Jupiter comes out, when something comes out and Mercury comes out at night, come on. So, what was I saying? So you think there's not a lot of drama going on in the solar system except for the natural drama, what we would call interpersonal drama. But just because we're humans doesn't mean that a tendency, that all the human tendencies, maybe a lot of this is about being sentient and conscience, having consciousness versus being a human. Some of this stuff, I would assume, because neither one of these people were human. But I'll refer to them as people because that's kind of how we interacted. And they would remind me, and I've been around enough to know I know very little. They say, okay, well, what do you mean you represent the sun? Who's going to be next? Representative from the Lollipop Guild? And they said, I'm sorry, what? And they said, it's not I can take it without offense. They say, well, it's just beyond your understanding. And separately, and this is public knowledge out there in the world beyond our world, in the transverse plane, wait a second, this might not even have been our sun and the moon. That makes a little more sense to me. Just realized that, but close enough because it was on the other side of the transverse plane. Interesting. They came here. Could have been, though. But basically, this drama, drama comes up at times, Earth, are we on the back of a turtle or not? News at 11. Who's the center of the universe? But this was more of it was a real decision case they were going to make, kind of between the moon and the sun, of vying for dominance in the hearts and minds of people for once and for all. Because I guess at least where this was, the two of them were going back and forth. And I'm not just talking about across the sky. And they got, there's gravitational stuff going on. And, they're doing campaigning, trying to win hearts and minds. And I guess people found it exhausting because they said, like, I'd like to enjoy you both, or why, please don't send me, dear son, don't send me any mailers, okay? And just because you didn't mail it doesn't make it a mail. Just because you hung it on my doorknob, soul, do you have soul for soul, whatever it was, don't do it, okay? And that was pretty much the common feeling. So what they decided was they were just going to have a big case, and that a group of their peers would decide, along with, some sort of person with sound judgment, which one was the best. Because that was basically what they're going, well, I'm the best, I'm like, well, I'm, everybody needs me for warmth. Okay. But that makes me the best because not people desire me. They don't need the moon. They just love the moon. And the sun said, well, and this is like, so it's just kind of, stuff like that. And people did try to help them work it out, and to figure out, like, okay. And so these two were the representatives of the sun and the moon. And they were so exhausted they couldn't sleep, either one of them, except, with a little bit of Scoots' magic. And I really listened to both of them. They seemed like they were going through the same thing. They had great affinity for whoever they represented, and a belief, but not necessarily belief that the sun was the best or the moon was the best. They also both were very concerned with, like, what would happen to them, their planet, sun's different, to their client, to their supervisor, what would happen if they, the other one won, and that created some, stress too. And I don't want to make broad statements about celestial beings. There you go. But obviously, they have like a heightened version of what you would consider a view of themselves. And they're not always the best listeners. Even the moon, not us, and or the sun. You'd say, wow. I mean. I don't know who I've told more secrets to, but probably the moon. Okay, the moon won that one, but that wasn't part of this story anyway. But I said, well, what if, who's in charge of this whole thing anyway? And they said, Celestial Council on, good planetary policy. And a couple other groups and the official, and I said, could you, and I said this both of them separate. I said, could you do a request for a change of venue? And they said, why? And I said, maybe some fresh perspective. I said, because this sounds like the system is perpetuating this rivalry. And, what's going to happen is that, other planets that are visible at nighttime or daytime, whoever wins, they're going to think about it too. And then they're going to want to have their chance. And this could just spread across the whole universe. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of benefit from it being I'm sure it's high profile out there. And I said, we could settle it somewhat privately. And they said, okay, what's your plan? And I said, well, okay, you got to have, impartial person and whatever the group of peers. So keep those. But I said, let's find a spot. And then I had to trust the transverse plane. Now, a couple other things to know about the transverse plane is when you first start walking through. So I walked with each one, the moon's representative, the moon keeper and the sun keeper. And we walked, and initially when you go through there, a lot of times it's cotton candy. You go through a cotton candy realm. And that really helped lighten up the mood and talk about trust building, because both of them, they said, this smells like cotton candy. It looks like cotton candy. And I said, it is. And then we had cotton candy fights and ate cotton candy, put it in each other's mouths, made cotton candy, beards and hair, even pretended we were cotton candy barristers and members of parliament. We had a lot of fun with cotton candy. And eventually we both ended up in a place that I said, well, this could be the place. Because I said, the transverse plane has wisdom. So it kind of picked this, which was strange. It was like back when Burger Kings used to have a sunroom. That was like, I don't know if that was Burger King's answer to the Playland. If it was, sorry for laughing at you, Burger King. But all of a sudden, a while in the 80s, Burger King's had basically you've seen it at people's houses where they say, well, this is our sunroom, our whatever you call it, greenhouse room. Burger King just put them on the front of Burger King's. So you could, especially on the East Coast, so you could pretend you're sitting outside in the winter. Meanwhile, there's we used to throw ashtrays at each other, me and my siblings. So this was basically an old version of that, with the sun. I said, well, what about that sunroom? I said, and then the sun started laughing. I said, okay. It's an area to view the sky. I said, there'll be a good backdrop. And they said, okay. And they said, well, what will be the evaluations, because obviously the Council on Planetary Matters and for the good governance of celestial beings or whatever, they have their own standards. They were going to, basically have us do these. I said, nah. And I said, don't worry, I'll take care of everything. And we'll get this all figured out. And I said, the only one other thing you got to agree to is that if we can't reach a consensus decision between the person with sound judgment and the peers within seven nights of it getting dark outside, I said, I hope the time changes. And I said, just 7/24. I said, I'll set a time equivalent to 7 Earth days. I said, oh, yeah, there won't be any night or day without the moon or the sun. They'll be occupied. And they said, okay, we can get them to agree to that. So they headed off. And I did inform them. I know some of you are like, what's the ethics of being an imaginary interloper or whatever? And I said, yeah, no, I let them know. I said, I'm working on this with the sun keeper too and the moon keeper. Oh, okay, don't worry. We'll figure, because they all had to agree anyway. And I knew at the time that the key to making all this work was someone named Sanders. And Sanders she was known as the world's loudest stenographer and transcriptionist or whatever, live transcriptionist. And so I got a hold of Sanders. I said, hey, I got something big coming up. I'd met them on the transverse plane too. I'd met Sanders out on the transverse plane. So Sanders said, don't worry, I'll be there. You count on it. And of course, the person with sound, I said, don't worry, this is going to be a thing. So then the first day we did calisthenics, the day one, and because they all had they had teams of obviously people that went to school for stuff, to experts in everything, and saying point of order. And I said, actually, I'm in charge of this. And they said, where's the agenda? And I said, the agenda is calisthenics. We're all going to be stretching. We had someone to lead calisthenics. And so we got to get loosened up for the whole day. That's all we did was like do calisthenics, then have a break and a snack. Do more calisthenics, had a break and a snack. Then the next day, I said we're gonna go tree climbing. And then everybody said, we can't go tree climbing because the sun and the moon aren't out. I said, oh boy, okay, that's, so we can't go tree climbing. Also, it could be awkward for the sun and the moon to tree climb. And, they said, you're bringing your earthly assumptions here. And the whole time, Sanders is like when I say the world's lost transcriptionists, most transcriptionists and stenographers are very quiet. So Sanders is going, yeah, okay. No tree climbing, stuff like that. Then the third day, I said, okay, that's it. Everybody dismissed for the day, adjourned. And I said, I always wanted to say that. Then the third day, I said, okay. No teams. I want to both the sun and the moon to separately, under your voice, talk about what it might be like if you were the opposite, if you were the sun or the moon. And they said, we're not opposites. And I said, interesting. So you're not opposites, eh? And they said, well, what do you mean under your breath at the same time? I said, okay, how about this? We'll separate you two. And each one of you will come up with your own speech about why it's great to be the moon if you're the sun and why it's great to be the sun if you're the moon. And what you might think about that. And you'll just do it here with Sanders. And this is where Sanders' power really came in because neither one of them was prepared. And they had and I'm not trying to, judge the sun or the moon, but they kind of were relying on their teams. Of course, their team said, and I said, there is no, I said, I object to your objection. You're overruled. So have you listened to any episodes of Sleep With Me? There's always going to be like, and they said, oh yeah, we have. We're familiar with those Get Bezos. So the sun and the moon, each had to sit there with Sanders and kind of come up with their idea. But the whole time Sanders was going, okay, yes. And they both got very flustered because they've both felt like, I can't figure out what I'm going to say. Every time I try to say something, they said, can I get another stenographer? I said, I'm sorry, this is the only stenographer we have. This is Sanders. And then like that dragged on for a day, but we got it done. It was just like a thought activity anyway, whatever we call it, thought experiment. And then the next day after that, I said, okay, go ahead. Like you're going to give your own presentation of why you feel like you're the best today. And again, they had to do that every time. They said, well, I'm the sun. I believe I'm the best because, I'm a source of heat and light. And then Sanders would go, heat and light, heat and light. So sometimes, and I don't think Sanders knew, that's the beauty of it, that it's like by repeating it 2 or 3 times, the sun did not, heat and light. Because the sun would make a lot of dramatic pauses. And then be like Sanders did it like 4, heat and light, and then underlined it. The sun says, I change with the seasons. I'm there. There's other planets. I provide, like you got, there's a lot of other unpopular stuff about me that I think is pretty good. I got these solar flares, I can hang up on people's calls if and actually the moon laughed at that. And then the moon went and he said, well, I don't provide heat, but I provide light at night. And I provide a way for people to follow some changes in time and season as well. I'm associated with the highlights of seasons. And I'm easier to look at, which I think is important in this discussion. And Sanders said, easy to look at. And the moon just stopped and kind of glared at Sanders. And Sanders actually said, proceed. And the moon stared and said, easy to look at. And then the moon kept staring, easy to look at. The moon was like, are you auditioning for a role or something? Easy to look at. And then the whole court cracked up with that one. And I said, by the way, Sanders, this is just how Sanders works. She doesn't even she's like, just here to take transcriptions of the thing. Like, don't worry about it. And finally what happened was, this was the one thing, they said, well, I can't, they both said, can we just stop, please? Can we have a recess without Sanders here? I said, I'm afraid not. We have to have everything transcribed. I was like, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking about extending this. We're supposed to be done in a few days, but I think we should extend this because you can't, unless we have a record of all these proceedings, how could we ever determine something that's probably indeterminable anyway? And he said, well, you know what, a great idea, the sun and moon. Let's stay here. And, just the three of us, and then it's the person with the judgment and the peers and your representatives, they can all go home. No reason, if we have a record of all this, everyone else could just review the record and go over it themselves later on, instead of having to sit here with the three of us and to work out, a way we're going to determine how we're going to determine something that's probably indeterminable. And then Sanders said, indeterminable. Because I paused, I'm not pausing now because I'm talking to you, my dear listener, and not to the sun and the moon and the gathered representatives. And everyone else was like, that sounds great. Actually, yeah, we'd have a transcription. We're going to have a transcription of everything. And then they said, well, how do we know that Sanders, and then the person with the sound judgment said, Sanders is one of the most recommended stenographers in any layer of the transverse. So don't worry about it. Also, it's being recorded. And then the sun and the moon started looking, and they made not eye contact, because, they don't have eyes, but they started to kind of say, how did all this get started? And I said, great question. How did all this get started anyway? And then Sanders said, how did all this get started anyway? And both the sun and moon said, I don't even remember. I mean, I think it was something about, it was some, bad feelings on an equinox or something. And I said, well, I said, we got to this place where it's like one of you has to be the best. And I guess we got to stay here till it's resolved. Either one of you is the best, or we determined that it's indeterminable. And Sanders said, indeterminable again. And then the sun and the moon looked at each other and they said, indeterminable. And then Sanders said, indeterminable. And the sun and the moon said, indeterminable. No, that's what I said. I said, indeterminable. And then the sun and moon said, unable to determine. And Sanders said, indeterminable, unable to determine. And they said, yeah, it's not, they said, it's indeterminable. And I said, are you saying that we're not going to ever be able to determine which one of you is better? And they said, correct. And so I said, you have come to the understanding that you're going to withdraw from this competition of who's better, the sun or the moon, and just and be like, yeah, it's not that sometimes you might have a different preference, but that's not something to be decided here in a way. And they said indeterminable. And then Sanders said that, and then that's how it got determined that it was indeterminable. Maybe, I don't know if it's even the right word. And that's why we still have a sun and a moon, luckily, because holy mackerel. I mean, think about the ramifications we avoided. And it wasn't me. I mean, I know, I'm going to probably get thousands of letters about how, not once again, but occasionally I do something right by a random process or processes, or I get lucky. But in this case, all the credit should go to Sanders. Sanders, she knew what she was doing. She was transcribing. She's the loudest transcriptionist in the world and just had to be herself, and it all worked out. So whether you're sleeping under the sun or the moon, they're both pretty darn great. Good night, everybody. All right, I want to thank everybody who became a patron recently. I want to thank Kevin, Ann, and Tyler. Thanks, good night. Jarita, Jennifer, and Krista. Thanks, and good night. Katie, Ted, and Janine. Thanks, and good night. Anna, Drew, and Rachel. Thanks, and good night. Locke, Janae, and Morgan. Thank you, thanks, good night. Paul, Trent, and Bella. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Kimberly, Shannon, and Esther. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Lau, Carol, and Lou. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Scott, Ella, and Amelia. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Sarah, Nicole, and Vivian. Thank you, thanks, good night. And Antoinette and Eco. Thank you, thanks, and good night. Thanks everybody who supports the show directly on Patreon or supports us on Apple Podcasts or supports the sponsors. That's how we're able to come out for you free twice a week, and really appreciate the support, and tons of other people do too. And, there's great free ways to help the show. Spreading the word, letting people know about the podcast is a great way to do that. Thank you so much. And here's some Tuck You In sponsors that enable us to grow all those archives. Thanks and good night.